Häusliche Gewalt ist ein Offizialdelikt in der Schweiz. Das heißt, dass die Behörden müssen ermitteln, wenn sie wissen, dass es häusliche Gewalt passiert ist. Jeder kann betroffen sein. Es ist wichtig, dass man Informationen holt. Es ist wichtig, dass Frau bewusst ist, was sie eben dagegen machen kann. Es ist wichtig, dass Frauen bewusst sind, dass die Gewalt kann auch schon bei der ersten Schimpfung beginnen, dass schon dort sie beobachten möchten, dass sie eben nicht akzeptieren sollen, dass sowas ist, dass sie das Recht haben, auch ein Leben ohne Gewalt zu leben.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. We are here today to speak about domestic violence. We will speak about psychological, emotional, and financial violence, which is the second episode from the talk show Speak Out, Break the Silence, Get Help, Stop the Violence. I am honored today to have with me in the studio two guests, which is Liliana Tinoco Beckart and Daniela Valdivia. Daniela is lawyer and Liliana is expert in integration. Welcome.
Thank you.
So today, emotional and financial abuse, it's a very hiding subject for everybody. It's abuse which is not so easy to see. Do you think that financial and the emotional abuse is a form of abuse, Liliana?
Well, it's definitely considered, even in the law, as abuse, and women are protected here in Switzerland from this form of violence. And as an author of a book about binational marriages, Brazilian women married to foreigners, I could hear that in lots of interviews. And women, when they go abroad, they are very vulnerable to this kind of violence, especially financial and psychological, because the men, they use this vulnerability that because the woman doesn't have a job, just arrived in the country, or spend her life taking care of the children because there is no family in Switzerland. Now it's better, it became better, but Switzerland was not tailored for women working, so workers, and they use this to limitate the amount of money that this woman has. And also they use the cultural differences to humiliate women. Of course, it doesn't happen in all relationships, but it happens, and we cannot ignore this.
Daniela, do you have something to complete?
Well, definitely it's something that might happen much more in these international relationships where values are not the same, ideas of family are not the same, ideas of relationships. But it's important to say that psychological abuse is also a legal offense under the Swiss law and in many other legislations. And therefore it's also important to pay attention on these signals, because not only beating up a woman can be violence, an act of violence can be diminishing her self-esteem, comparing to other women, limiting the access to communication with her family, or limiting, of course, the financial resources or the access to studies. So yes, there is, I would say, a broad number of possibilities of being victim of psychological abuse, and we don't even realize.
Yes, and also it's good to mention that also sexual violence in the marriage is also a violence, and it's forbidden. The man or the woman nobody can be forced to have sex. Nobody has this obligation. And it happens a lot as well in this kind of relationship.
Which is the profile of the abuser, for example, and which is the profiling of the victim, if they have one type of profile, and how we can recognize these people if we met them? Because you said, Daniela, it's very difficult. Sometimes people are in a relationship and they don't know they are maybe in a toxic relationship, and they are like the victim of psychological abuse. So, Liliana, which can be the profile of this kind of person, which is like the abuser?
I don't know if I can talk about a single profile, but I can say, based on my interviews with specialists, not only with women, specialists like psychologists, anthropologists, psychiatrists, and I think it's very common that these men, as Daniela said, they limit this woman to study the language. If in the case that I studied, right, binational marriages, the men who are always controlling the money in a very aggressive way. I mean, they give
putting limits,
limit for everything, limiting the amount of food. And if you marry, or if you have a relationship with a person from another culture, I think since you meet this person and you see they are making fun of your culture, making fun of your accent, making fun of your country, I think it's an alert that you should, why is this person laughing at me? I think it should be a sign, right? What do you think?
Yeah, well, for sure. If a person is making fun of your identity or aspects of your cultural identity, your personal identity, your religion, your accent, for instance, it is a red flag. It's not normal that someone uses things against you, that laughs at you. I mean, it's funny as long as it's funny for me too. But if he is laughing at me and it's making me feel bad, embarrassed, diminished, of course, there is a sign, and I have to speak out. You are making me feel bad. I don't like this game. I don't like the way you're treating me. And it's very important, I would say, much more in these international relationships, that when you are deciding to take the next step, marrying the person or moving with the person, it's important to set the rules. To set the rules, so we're going to talk that way. I don't like this. I don't like that. And the moment you experience any sort of the other person yelling at you, insulting your religion, insulting your family, your culture,
your body,
you have to say that. If you hold it like, okay, it's just once, then it comes again, it's the second time, it's okay. No, you have to say it the very first time.
So to draw the boundaries.
Yes, and to make aware the other person this is harming.
So I understood that you was a victim of domestic violence in the past. I think you start like with the psychological abuse first. What happened to you? Well, tell us from your experience too.
From my experience, I would like to talk about the 5 steps that normally the social, the predators or the psychopaths or people with psychopathic features, because you cannot say someone is psychopath, or
the
narcissist.
Behavior disorder, let's say like that.
Let's say like that. They normally go through 5 steps, like the standard procedures, and you can find these in research, even in the case of Michael Jackson. They make you fall in love, of course, and they make you think that that's the right person, and then they move forward with the environment, like your close friends, your family, your maybe your
but in the first
colleagues.
Step is very fast.
It's very fast because you don't need to do much. You know what they do? They activate the mirror neurons. So they kind of act the same way you do. So if you like to eat chicken, So I say, yo, I love it too. That's so nice, you know. At the beginning, they all exactly the same. So you think, oh, this is my soulmate, you know. So it's very easy. This part is kind of easier. So then they move forward to meet the family, meet the colleagues, and they really make things. This is the person, and people around you start saying like, hey, you have to marry this guy. This guy is the best. You won the lottery, you know. So the third step would be
but they burn very fast each step, each stage, right?
I wouldn't say so, and it depends a lot on the person. If you're strong, of course they're going to take much more, but it's challenging for them and they like it. You know, it's like when you have already a person that is that you have already possessed person, even sometimes they leave you and they look for another victim. So it depends. So the third step would be that they start affecting your self-esteem. They make you aware of like your physical, your appearance, like, you look a little older today, or I don't like your hair.
Or you are very sensitive, you have too much emotions. And
like they, you know, my ex-husband would tell me, you are a lawyer in Bolivia, but not here. And I'm telling you this because I don't want you to apply to good jobs because you're going to be rejected. Yeah, he told me he did it out of love, like you'll be rejected and I don't want you to go through that, so don't even apply, you know, like, and you think, oh, he meant it really nice, but, so this is the third step. The fourth step is isolating you. With very small things, such as at the beginning is like really nicely, like you're going with your friends to a coffee and then they say like, hey,
I don't like your friends.
No, or they can even say like, you know, stay with me because I miss you and I would like to spend some time with you. So they kind of isolate you without you realizing it.
Emotional blackmail, like.
Exactly. And the fifth step is when they go directly and just they have you there so they can abuse you. And it gives them pleasure. So when you cry, you are really like feeding their ego. When you cry, when you feel bad, or even when you feel guilty. So it's very important that we have these red flags and we can see them. And the first thing we have to do when we are starting a relationship, and even more when it's an international relationship, bringing our boyfriend, girlfriend to our family and friends. This is the first filter. Sometimes they don't want to say anything because they see you so happy and they say afterwards, right? Like, yeah, I never liked him, you know. I didn't want to tell you because you look very happy with him. But you have to say it. If you see someone that is acting weird, you have to say it to your friend. Maybe you're going to create some mistrust because the person is going to say, no, he's really nice. But you will be free of any sort of blaming when the person is going through domestic violence. You will say, I told you. Not because you want to throw it on her face, but because you were not being silent upon such kind of behavior. Like, you know, sometimes I tell you, I have my best friend and he would tell me, do you really think she's your best friend? I think she envies you. I think she's jealous because you will marry.
And waiting for the fifth step, you will be very vulnerable, right?
No, you don't have friends. Yeah. You don't have your network of support. You don't have self-esteem. And that's it.
And maybe you don't have a job. Maybe you stay at home.
Yes.
You depend economically from the person.
Yeah.
Okay, and from there, let's do like a parallel. Which is the profile of the victim? Or exists somebody more vulnerable? Or
I would like to add something about this.
Please.
What you said, you depend financially. I think we have really to think that it's not a shame that you depend on your husband. Sometimes the family is tailored that way, that the woman stays at home and she wants to do that, to take care of the children. But this woman works a lot. So it's not an excuse at all, in any case, that the guy will not give money to this lady because she is cooking, taking care of the children, of the family, and doing lots of things for him. So it's not a shame, and it's okay to stay at home and do this job.
And this means a lot of economic contribution as well. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
there is a lot of scientific papers and research that what you're doing at home, because that's why I hate to call it like she's not working. I always say she works at home, because like taking care of a whole household, you know, like children, food, cleaning, and everything that has to do with taking care of a house, of a home, has a cost. And this cost is something that you are saving to your partner.
And for example, in the beginning of relationship, beside to see the red flags, how you can draw a line, and where is the line between normality and disorder, let's say like that, because it's very difficult, maybe many times, to see it. So how the victim will think, yes, I am in a toxic relationship, I am abused, or is the normality?
So in case of these relationships with foreigners, it's very complicated because some couples get married very quickly because the guy goes for vacation and he meets the lady in the country, and then it goes very quickly. Many of them, from my book, my interviews, many of them met themselves online. So some stories are very successful, but I think there is never 100% of guarantee, but it's life, right? And I think as well, what Daniela said before, talking about subjects and like letting everything already discussed, and you know more or less how the person thinks.
Discussing the values.
You want to have children. What do you think about being vegetarian or not?
Language.
All topics. Yeah, I want to speak
Communication.
Portuguese with my children. What do you think? No, I think German is the only language that should be spoken at home. So it's already a big problem. Imagine if you want to speak your mother tongue with the child. So.
Daniela,
Well,
do you have something to speak about these lines, and what we can do in case that we see some features, some traits in that person, how we can improve that?
So it's not normal, definitely, that someone wants to marry you right away when they know you. And it's important that you understand that it's also lack of emotional intelligence. Because if a person really wants to marry you and wants to share his or her life with you, they have to meet your family, they have to get to know you better, they have to know your culture. So these are things that we have to think, not only feel. Of course, Liliana was talking about how you have to address certain topics just before entering in a serious relationship, such as marrying or moving together. But also when you are at the beginning of the relationship, where everything is like in rose and, you know, everything is perfect, then
Honeymoon.
Yeah, exactly. It's the honeymoon phase that you have to be paying attention on. What is he doing? Like, he really wants to, if he wants to speed up the relationship, there is something wrong. So I think it's
To
really
compress maybe 6 months in 6 days, then.
yeah, it's not working like that. I wouldn't say so. I mean, you've interviewed other people that maybe it worked out, like marrying so fast, but I wouldn't advise this if you want your relationship to be sustainable.
Liliana, do you think this kind of psychological abuse has consequences in the victim?
For sure, because many of these women, they develop a panic attack and anxiety, they have depression, and it's very sad, especially if you suffer this kind of violence away from your home, from your family. These women are really vulnerable, right, Daniela? It's a tragedy. It's very sad.
So they can have, for example, after the relationship, like a post-traumatic stress syndrome. Daniela, do you have something to add to this?
Well, first of all, that is important that you don't feel ashamed when you went through such experience. Like, you have to speak up, talk about that, talk to people. It's not your fault. It's not that you deserved it. So you have to be aware it's something that happened to you, something like when you crash your car, or, you know, like when you lose your phone, whatever. So it's something that happened to you. You have to maybe be strong enough to talk about it and learn from it for the future, but look for help. It's really a signal of maturity that you seek for help, because that's the only way you're gonna overcome the trauma. And think that there is also other people that are good people, and you've told these stories of nice, happy endings.
Yes.
But it's important to talk about that and to ask for help.
So do you think if somebody realizes that it's in a toxic relationship where it's controlled or it's abused emotionally, they can do something about it? They can tell to the abuser, change the behavior of the abuser?
I don't think
Do you
so.
think that is possible?
I don't think so, because if the abuser is a narcissist or a psychopath, they will never realize they are doing something bad. And I don't think these people have a self-critic, right?
Self-awareness, yeah.
Self-awareness of the problems.
They lack empathy,
Yeah.
mainly. So they can see you crying and they wouldn't do anything. I really think if you encounter such situation, if you realize you are being victim of abuse and you've done already everything, and you've done everything, you just move forward. You leave this relationship and you move forward. You look for help. He's not going to change. And if he's going to change, it's not because you're asking him. He's going to change because you want to. He's going to change because he's going to have his own process. But it's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And for example, in your case, because you had the experience, how you was still involved in that relationship during 5 years? Why? And what was your last decision related with it?
Okay, no, actually it happened, as I mentioned before, 11 years ago, I founded my NGO. I started with this issue of domestic violence, trying to develop programs to prevent it. And 5 years ago, I ended up marrying this guy, and I stayed with him only 3 months and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry,
I left.
I understood
but
the
it
different
seemed to
thing,
me
yeah.
1 year, 3 years of my life. When I left him, I felt I was really lost for so long. I didn't recognize myself on the mirror. I felt I was broken, you know, because he would tell me, he would only insult me. He would tell me I'm useless, like I'm nothing, like I'm garbage, and I would believe it. So that's why it's important to talk about it. Like, I've never felt embarrassed of talking about my situation. I actually like to talk to women so that they can also speak up. Sometimes you talk about this and then they say like, yeah, I also went through something like that, and then they start. So I think in my case, I had the resources. That's why I also think it's very important that when we are raising women mainly,
yes,
also boys, to respect women, but when you're raising women, to teach them to be strong, to have self-esteem, to learn how to stand for their rights,
to draw boundaries,
to know that they can achieve anything they want and they don't need anyone to be there to achieve anything, you know? Like, you are enough yourself. You don't need to be completed by anyone. And if you want to be a millionaire and you want to be an entrepreneur, you can do it yourself. You don't need to marry someone to do that. And on the other way around, saying to children, to boys, like, you can do anything. You can cook whatever you want to cook. You can have a nice, beautiful home. And you don't need a wife for that. If you want to marry, you marry because you're in love, not because you need another mom. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Liliana, we know that in cases like this, almost always the victim come back. Why? Why that happens?
Well, according to psychologists...
And from your experience, maybe with the people you interview for your book, what is the reason?
The psychologists say it's a spiral of violence, and the perpetrator makes the victim to feel
safe again.
And also guilty. Because she would be the responsible.
Exactly.
But I think in the case of binational relationships, it's even more complicated because you are alone. If you don't have the job to maintain, to sustain yourself, if you have children, it gets even more complicated. It's very difficult for a woman to abandon in this environment this situation. It's not, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it's more difficult. And also, I think binational couples, so they fight more for the relationship to work because it's even more complicated to get a divorce. And I think because of this, maybe the situation could be longer than it could take years to get out of this situation.
Daniela, do you have something to complete the
Well,
answer?
I think another aspect is the financial aspect, as well, the emotional aspect. You feel you have no self-esteem, you feel you can't find another person that can love you and accept you the way you are.
You're weak, right?
You're weak. Maybe you stop working, maybe you stop seeing your friends, so you feel alone. And well, in my case, I left once and I came back for one night because that was the day that I thought I have nowhere to go, I have nothing to eat, but at least at his place, and he was begging me to go back, at least at his place I have a roof over my head, you know? I have a shelter. I went back, I realized he was not changing. He just used all what he could use to get me back, and then I had to leave again.
Okay. In this case, I think it's more difficult, but where a victim can find help? Liliana?
Well, we have a homepage where you can find help. You can access in many languages, but you write in German, Opferhilfe, Schweiz.ch. Opfer is victim, Hilfe is help, and Schweiz is Switzerland in German, and then .ch. And you can have counseling for free. And you also have the institution Binational Marriages, so www.binational.ch. It's not for free, but they can even to give a consultancy for the couple, which is very interesting.
Do you think that you have something to add to this subject?
Well, yeah, maybe to repeat that you don't need to feel embarrassed. This could happen to anyone. I mean, it happened to me, even though I was already knowledgeable on the topic. So I would say, if you feel sad every day, if you don't feel like eating every day, if you feel like the relationship is not going anywhere, you're crying every day, something is wrong. You have to look for help. Right?
Okay, thank you very much, ladies, for being here today with us. And I would like to thank you to the technical team too of Diaspora TV. And thank you viewers for staying again with us. Good day.